Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Wakar. I'll be running the NuoDB webinar. Just want to give everybody just another minute before we get started, and we'll get right into the demo and presentation. So just give everybody just a few quick minutes, and we'll pick this right back up. Okay, just want to make sure everybody can hear me and see my screen. I think we're about ready to start now. So if you can hear me, please let me know using the Q&A section of the GoToMeeting webinar, and we'll go ahead and get started. If you can't hear me, please also use the webinar, the Q&A window in the webinar. Go to webinar section, and we'll get started. Great. Okay, so my name is Wakar. I am the technology evangelist here at NuoDB, and this is the NuoDB Starlings release 1.1 webinar and demo. We're very excited to have released this product. We had an excellent launch event. We had an excellent GA release back in January, and this is the first major release after our GA release. So in today's webinar, we're going to be covering just some basic 5-minute NuoDB overview stuff for those of you who have not, who are new to NuoDB or may not be familiar with how we work. Then we'll jump right into what's new with the 1.1 release, and then we'll do a quick demo, and we'll end with a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions during this presentation or during the demo, please feel free to use the GoToWebinar Q&A window, and we will get to all of your questions at the end of the webinar. Okay, so just a brief overview of NuoDB and why it's important to use NuoDB as your backend database. So essentially, what all developers, DBAs, operations people would love to do is manage a single logical database, build all of their applications on a single logical database. And NuoDB essentially represents that. We're a single logical database that can be distributed across multiple data centers, multiple nodes within the cloud, and at the same time, we continue to represent ourselves as one database to any application that you're building on top of. The other thing that's really important to know about NuoDB is that even though we're completely distributed, we still maintain all the things that you've been used to with traditional databases such as the SQL language and also ACID compliance, and we, through our distributed nature, offer you elastic scalability and both from a scale out perspective and from a scale in perspective. Now, building applications on NuoDB is like building applications on any other database. You essentially want to be able to build your application on a single database and make the assumption that that one database can scale infinitely. Now, NuoDB handles all of the scalability components for you. And this is a real easy example of how you can get started with NuoDB. So beginning with the domain, which is essentially just a top-level container for all of the resources that can participate in NuoDB database. You can then add a single host to this domain, or you can add multiple hosts to this domain. This example is showing a single host within a NuoDB domain, and this single host has 2 processes running on it, a transaction engine and a storage manager, which are essentially the 2 fundamental processes that are sort of the core components of any NuoDB database. You can run these processes on individual host machines within a domain, or you can run them all on the same machine within a domain, which is the example that we're looking at. transaction engine is responsible for processing any SQL that your client applications might be requesting. And they also are responsible for dynamically caching any data that might be in demand to limit the number of round trips that your applications or the database would need to make to the storage manager. Storage managers are essentially a process that are responsible for the D in ACID. So what the storage manager does is it communicates with the transaction engine, serves up any data that the transaction engine might be requesting based on your client applications, but it also is responsible for persisting your data to disk for durability purposes. So that's the very basic example of NuoDB and how you can get one up and running quickly. Now, the idea behind NuoDB is to simplify your life. So you as application developers may have run into scaling databases or scaling your applications on top of databases that don't typically scale very well. There's a couple of different ways that people are scaling their databases. One might be the scale-up model, where you simply just buy more hardware resources. And I think that's fantastic for the people that can afford to throw more and more resources at their database. Other applications scale by way of caching, partitioning, or sharding, which introduce some level of complexity, both from an operational perspective in terms of the ops folks or the DBAs that are maintaining these environments, and then also from an application architecture perspective, where the application now is responsible for connecting to multiple individual databases and maintaining sort of referential integrity across all the different partitions or shards that you may have within the system. NuoDB essentially simplifies this whole process for you. So, for example, if you need more concurrency and you need to add more and more users to the application and the database needs to be able to handle these users, you can simply scale out both from a transactional perspective as well as from a storage perspective. So if you want your applications to go faster, simply add more transaction engines. And that's what we're looking at here on this particular slide here. So all of these bubbles here represent transaction engines, and then all of the applications on the left-hand side connect directly to transaction engines. Now what's unique about NuoDB is that it allows you to scale both your transactional throughput as well as your storage managers independent of each other. So if you wanted to build a system that was highly available, fault-tolerant, with built-in redundancy, you simply would add, an extra storage manager or two in a data center in a cloud environment, and you essentially have a fault-tolerant system that's highly available, and you can dynamically add and remove resources to and from it. Now, one of the things that NuoDB does for you is maintain consistency of data across the entire domain. So, for example, if application A is making updates into transaction engine 1 up here, those updates are actually being broadcast to wherever that data may exist, all the way down to the storage managers and the disk that we're persisting your data on top of. So that's all I really wanted to cover in terms of the high-level 5-minute overview of NuoDB. I know I've thrown a lot of concepts at you guys in terms of concurrency control, maintaining consistency within a distributed system. And if you guys want to find out more, we have lots of very nice resources for you on the NuoDB Tech Blog, which is actually maintained by our engineering staff. So if you want to understand how we maintain consistency across our distributed database, right now we're featuring a 4-part series on distributed multi-version concurrency control. So definitely go to the Tech Blog, which is just nuodb.com/tech blog, and you can read all about how NuoDB works. And it's also a great way for you guys to engage directly with our engineering staff. Okay, so the reason why we're all here today, what's new in NuoDB Starlings release 1.1? So to begin with, we've included some major performance enhancements in the 1.1 release, and obviously the general theme of every release is performance, and then also we've made some significant improvements in stability. So if you guys thought our 1.0 release was blazing fast, if any of you guys saw the scale out demo during our launch, wait till you download 1.1 and try it out. You'll be pleasantly surprised and impressed with the amount of performance gains we've been able to make in these few short months. The next major theme of this particular release with significant Microsoft improvements, which we'll get into momentarily. But essentially what we've done is we've offered a complete 64-bit port of NuoDB, so it natively will run 64-bit on Windows Server, Windows 7 and 8. And we've done extensive testing of this particular release on the Microsoft Azure platform. So if any of you guys were interested in deploying NuoDB on Azure, that is a completely supported deployment environment with this release. Other cool new features in NuoDB include significant enhancements to the NuoDB console. So for those of you who used the console in the 1.0 release, you guys are going to see some really cool things during the demonstration today. And then last but not least, the NuoDB Dev Center, which is a one-stop shop for all of your developer needs, whether that be documentation, downloads and drivers, or just basic getting started guides for whatever languages that you guys are looking to build applications with NuoDB. Okay, so let's get into NuoDB and Microsoft. So just some background here. We've had very strong historical support for Microsoft. In fact, we've always had a Microsoft release. This is just the first time that we're offering a complete 64-bit version of NuoDB. 80% of all of our downloads are actually Windows downloads. We've had ODBC driver support since Beta 3, and we had an overwhelming response with over 200 users in the .NET beta program that actually started engaging with us very early on in this process. So in addition to our new operating platform support and our support for Azure, one of the major things that we've released is a fully managed AVO Dotnet driver for NuoDB. So why should this matter to you? Well, it's all about performance, and it's all about direct integration with all the tools that you're used to using. What we're looking at here is a chart of our performance benchmarks that were done based on number of records loaded. So on the left-hand side, the value is time in milliseconds, and then below on the horizontal axis, it's the number of records that were loaded. So as you can see, the ODBC line, in terms of the amount of time that it took to load these records, is significantly greater than the AVO Dotnet line. It's actually about AVO Dotnet is actually about between 60 and 65% faster than the ODBC driver. Now, the significance of this particular graph is that it's not something that NuoDB generated. It's actually something that one of our .NET users shared on our community forums. And again, the community forums are part of the Developer Center, which we just rolled out. So if you guys want to go and check it out, it's nuodb.com/dev-center. And if you click the forums link, you'll be taken directly to the community forum. You can find this information. Now, the forum is also a really great place for you guys to engage with each other and other existing community members and find out what other people are doing with NuoDB, not just from a .NET perspective, but in general, the types of applications. And it's also a great place for you to get advice from our support staff and our engineering staff. We're actually all active members of our community center. Okay, so continuing on the Microsoft release here, with the AVO Dotnet driver, we're now also fully supporting link and entity framework. So, if you guys are using language integrated queries in your .NET applications today, all of that should just work with our .NET driver. We're also so from an entity framework perspective, we're supporting both code first and model first paradigms in terms of developing your applications. And we have Visual Studio integration from a data migration and from a tools perspective as well. So you can use SSIS to bulk import and export data from SQL Server as well as NuoDB. And if you're using SQL Server tools, you can actually use sort of the query editors, the schema browsers, and all of that natively with the new AVO Dotnet driver as well. Okay, so that's enough slideware for now. Let's quickly jump into the demo of the product. So I'm just going to open up my VM here where I have the product preloaded. Okay, so as you all know, if you've downloaded NuoDB, it's actually just a few clicks in order to get it installed. What I've done is I've pre-installed it, and essentially as soon as the install screen is done, this is the window that you're brought to, which is a window of our web console. So if you're familiar with the 1.0 product, you know that this is a significant improvement over sort of the out-of-the-box user experience that you get with the 1.1 product. So you're brought to this very nice home screen where we've laid out several different options for you to get started, including the Quick Start Guide, which essentially bootstraps a database with a couple of tables in it. There's the admin center, which you guys are used to, that allows you to monitor and manage the overall domain environment. There's a brand new SQL Explorer, which we'll get into momentarily, which allows you to browse your schemas, create tables, and execute SQL. And then there are several demos and samples that we've baked right into the NuoDB console. By the way, all of these demos are open source. You can actually go to the samples tab, go directly to GitHub, and you can download these independent of the console and run them. So there's a lot more out here than we've made available in the console. But the one that we're going to focus on specifically is the storefront demo, which is integrated directly into the console. So let's go ahead and launch that. So you simply open storefront, and it'll take you to the storefront. Now, the view that you're by default opened up into is the control panel view, where you get to actually configure the different load and demand scenarios within the storefront. But one of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted to show you guys exactly the different types of things that you can do with NuoDB if you were, let's say, for example, building an e-commerce site. So we actually went down the path of building a full-fledged e-commerce front end. And when you click the shopping site button, it takes you to the front end, but it continues to give you sort of the statistics from a back-end perspective as well. So, you know, the number of calls that we're making, the number of items in shopping carts, the number of active users that are currently on the website. And then down here, it also gives you a running total in terms of statistics, the number of reviews that are in the system, the amount of customers, the purchases, the total value of the purchases, and the uptime. Right? So you can go in and you can interact with all of the products. It gives you an idea of the types of latency that your customers might be experiencing if you build an e-commerce platform onto us. So, you know, when you go into the control panel and change the controls, you can immediately see what the effects of changing those controls and changing the demand on your database would be to a user that's browsing products in your product catalog from a website front-end perspective. Okay, so let's quickly switch back over into the control panel here, and let me walk you through exactly what you're able to configure on the back end. So the idea behind this application is to allow you to simulate different demand scenarios on a database so that you can prepare for the holidays, a special promotion that might be coming up, unpredictable demand, so you can stress test your system using this particular backend demo. So the types of users that we have are back office analysts, and you'll see the significance of why these guys are important when we switch over to the admin or the Explorer side of this. We have people that are browsing reviews, and let's say there's 1,000 people browsing reviews. There's 1,000 people that are just looking. There's 100 people, let's say, for example, that are just fast purchasers, people that are coming in, they know exactly what they want, and they go to their shopping carts and they immediately check out. And then there's 100 people that are slow purchasers. So if you notice, when you download so now it's telling me, hey, based on the resources that I have, I may want to scale back because I'm running this on a very small VM. So let's go ahead and fix this. So you get almost immediate feedback in terms of how things are configured within the system. But what I was saying is when you first download NuoDB and you go through the store panel, you'll notice that the instant purchaser is not an option that you can configure. This is something that we've designed specifically for scale-out purposes. So if you install this product or the sample demo on many nodes, then this option will enable itself, and you can kind of stress test the system from a scale-out perspective as well. Okay. So, so that's how you configure this. And then again, as you configure this, you should be able to see the different types of things that are happening from a front-end perspective. All right, so during the overview, we talked a lot about the different processes that make up a simple NuoDB database. And if we simply switch over to the admin section, this will allow you to browse your domain, look at what databases are running, and right now the only database that we're running is the storefront database. So when you click on storefront, you see the storefront, you see the amount of resources that it's taking up within the storefront. And if you actually click the database itself, you get to see all the different processes that are running. So in this case, what I have is I have a storage manager and 2 transaction engines that are running on this single machine here. If I want to add a process, I simply click Add Process. I select the database that I want to add a process to. I select localhost. I want to add another transaction engine. I hit Submit, and instantaneously there's another transaction engine that's up and running. We didn't have to do anything to the running database or the application. If I had connected this to another host machine, we would have easily been able to scale this out and increase transactional throughput. Now, similar to how you're able to add a process, you can also shut down a process just as fast. So, if you're in a situation where you don't need the extra processes, you can simply click on the process, you can click shut down, and you can now reuse those resources for something else. Okay, so that's from an administrative perspective, and the reason why I wanted to spend a little bit of time here is during the overview I explained, hey, the most basic NuoDB database is a single transaction engine and a single storage manager, which is what we're looking at, and in order to scale it out, it's not some big, long, complicated process. It's just a simple matter of clicking a few buttons, and you have almost instantaneous scale out and scale in capabilities. All right, so let's move on to the Explorer section here, where you get to browse all the different databases and schemas that you might have in the system. Right now, I only have one database, which corresponds to the storefront demo that's currently running. And from a back-end business analyst perspective, maybe one of the things that I want to do is I want to go in here and I want to see, hey, let me look at the shopping cart and let me see, what types of, shopping cart purchases people are making. And maybe I want to, in a running database, look and see, hey, show me all of the selections in here where quantity is, let's say, greater than, let's say, 5. And I can actually go ahead and do that directly within the NuoDB console here. Right? So let me just make sure I spelled quantity right. So for those of you who know me, know that I have a little bit of a spelling problem. And, there's just 7 and execute. Boom. So there we go. So dynamically, you can run queries against an OLTP database. And again, one of the ways that we're able to do that is, let's say, from a transactional perspective, you only need 2 transaction engines to handle the OLTP load. You can actually provision 2 more transaction engines to handle real-time analytical type queries to analyze people's shopping cart. So for example, if I narrow this list down to who are the slow purchasers where quantity is equal to 7, maybe in real time I can push out a message to them in their e-commerce site saying, hey, if you purchase 10 items or more, you'll get free shipping. So it really helps you, maximize your application without, major impact or without building any kind of major back-end infrastructure. Okay, so I know I'm throwing a lot at you guys, and if you guys have any questions, please feel free to continue to type them in the Q&A section of the GoToWebinar, and I'll be able to get to them shortly. The final piece that I wanted to cover within the demo portion of the webinar is really the Dev Center. And this is a brand new thing that we're creating in support of our DBAs and developers that are using NuoDB. It's essentially your one-stop shop for all of the things that you need to get started. So we have getting started guides, we have programmer resources in terms of languages and tools, we have the SQL reference, So if you want to know, hey, what SQL statements and what functions are supported within NuoDB, if you want help getting started, there's a couple of different getting started guides that are available to you in here. But it's also a consolidation of our forums, which we talked about earlier. So again, if you guys come to the Dev Center and join our forum, you get to engage with our very vibrant and active community as well as NuoDB staff. Our tech blog is also a part of the new Dev Center, where I mentioned we're featuring sort of a 4-part blog series on multi-version concurrency control by Trek Palmer, one of our lead engineers. And again, if you want to engage with the NuoDB engineering staff, if this stuff sounds cool to you guys, there's no better way to engage with our engineers than to read their stuff, comment on their stuff, and ask them questions directly within the tech blog. They're actually a great group of people and very helpful in terms of helping our customers and our users. From a resources perspective, all of your drivers are available now in a single spot. You can come in here and not only get all of the documentation that you need for NuoDB supported drivers as well as community supported drivers, but you can get direct links to them directly from GitHub. And then, of course, from a download perspective, if you guys want to download the developer edition, you can get it directly from the Dev Center now. Okay, so I know we've definitely covered a lot in the past 30 minutes. I just want to give anybody who has any questions at this point an opportunity to ask questions. Again, feel free to use the GoToWebinar window for any questions and answers that you may have. Okay, so first question is, does NuoDB support any other cloud services other than Azure? Yes, we do. Actually, the cloud services that we're currently actively supporting are AWS, Amazon Web Services in the marketplace. So if you go to aws.marketplace.com, you'll see that we have a native AMI available for people to use in the AWS marketplace. We also are in the process of getting NuoDB supported on the Google Compute Engine. And then, as I mentioned in the previous presentation portion of today's webinar, we do support deployment on Azure. We've done some extensive testing, and we'll be shortly offering a complete Azure integrated solution to those of you guys who might be interested. Okay, so the next question that we have is, where is the AVO Dotnet driver? So from an AVO Dotnet driver perspective, the driver is actually baked directly into the Windows download. It's also available on GitHub. So if you want to download it and create a fork of it yourself, you can definitely go to GitHub and download the driver from there. And you can also download the Windows build, and it'll just be baked right into the Windows build itself. Next question is, does NuoDB handle stored procedures? If yes, can I import SPs written in T-SQL? If no, when will this feature be added? So currently, NuoDB does not support stored procedures. However, we are actively working on getting stored procedures support built into the product. In the 1.2 release, we're going to start off with Java stored procedures, and then moving from there, we'll definitely be expanding that capability out. Okay, next question is, let's say we use AWS and want to use NuoDB across regions, analogous to replication on traditional DB scheme. What's the overhead like in terms of bandwidth So what can we harness multi-regional deployment? Actually, that's a great question. We actually have an upcoming webinar with the Amazon folks and Seth Proctor, our new CTO here at NuoDB. And if you actually join that webinar, they're actually going to cover geographic distribution and management on NuoDB. So I can give you sort of a semi-answer right now, but I think that it'll be time well spent if you join the AWS webinar that we're doing jointly with Amazon, and Seth Proctor, our CTO, will actually be leading that discussion with them. Okay, next question here. How many TEs are recommended per server? So ideally, we recommend that you use 1 TE per server. However, one of the things that you can do with NuoDB that you can't do with other databases is we have this concept of multi-tenancy. For example, if you have a large machine and you're going to provision lots of databases with either low volume or low transactions, you can actually deploy NuoDB on a single machine and deploy hundreds of instances on NuoDB on a single machine. And then if any one of those instances exhibits any kind of load, you can actually scale out those databases on other machines as well. Tried importing a MySQL dump, but it fails. Is it not supported? So NuoDB also includes a Migrator application, so you can use the NuoDB Migrator to connect to MySQL and bulk extract and bulk load data from MySQL into NuoDB. If you're having any kind of problems with this, please definitely go to our support forum and either post in a topic or engage directly with our user support, and they will definitely be able to help you out with that as well. Next question is, it looks like the upgrade path for NuoDB includes a wholesale replacement of every instance. Is this currently the standard, and will it be for the near future / next year? So one of the things that NuoDB supports even currently are rolling upgrades. So for example, you can actually upgrade individual nodes in NuoDB without actually taking down the active database. But if that's not the question that you're asking, or if you have a different question, please feel free to reach out to me directly, or you can send an email to info@nuodb.com, and we'll definitely get an answer to your question. Okay, so